Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, coaching for success in sport and business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let them have it, coach.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. Today it is a fellow Aussie originally from Perth, Australia. Simon Gale is on the show. He's the Senior Director of Racquet Sports and he's also at the USTA National Campus in Orlando, Florida as the Senior Director of Racquet Sports. I just said that. Emma, look at that. Repeating yourself already. Now, what makes a great coach is someone who repeats the same message over and over again. You know what? I'm going to go straight into that, Simon. Have you ever heard a parent say to a child, "Oh, your coach has said that over and over and over again. Why do you not listen to your coach?" Have you ever heard that before?
Firstly, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the invitation to speak with you today. But I would say, yes, it's more about how many times I've heard that. I mean, if I had $1 for every time you'd heard it, I'd probably be retired. I wonder where sometimes our education of parents and them understanding the process and that their child is 8 years old and everything doesn't come to them immediately and the repetition is important, like everything else in their life. How many times have you asked them to clean up their room before eventually one day they start doing it? Like there's some repetition that's necessary. So yeah, good question. Way to kick us off with a great coaching question.
Yeah, I think, it's so important just to reflect on your own coaching. And like anything, our great sport of tennis and all the different racket sports, over time, over repetition, you repeat the same movement over and over again. And of course, you get better at it. And there are ways that you can short circuit things. There are ways that you can hack time. I mean, I didn't finish off your bio in the introduction here around that you oversee a team of 35 plus teaching professionals, including 5 head professionals and managers, plus offering 125 programs, seeing over 400,000 visitors annually and engaging more than 2,000 players on a weekly basis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm wondering about the role of, you wear many hats, right? So you've got this hat on that you oversee this huge program as a director of rackets sport development. How do you build culture? How do you lead that team? Let's start with one of the most important topics in leadership in business. How do you get those 35 teaching pros who may have a different philosophy on teaching? How do you get them on the same page to move in the direction of the vision of what you want to achieve?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's something that I don't think anybody in this role, when I came in 5 years ago, would say, anyone, if they'd come in and done this, would be able to say, I'm ready for this role. I think your work history helps prepare you for making decisions and driving a team and presenting a vision and all those types of things. Your work experiences set you up to go through the necessary steps, but not many of us have managed a team of 35. Now it's closer to 50 because we've got a fellowship program and a 2-year apprenticeship program. So we've got an extra 16 people here throughout the year now. So we're a huge team. And it probably took me 6 to 12 months to work out how do I approach this in a way that I'm going to be able to have the impact I want. It's easy to have a vision statement and write your culture up on the wall. And Alistair McCaw talks about that a lot, about you go into these clubs or facilities and they've got beautiful philosophies and visions and culture statements and everything on their wall. But within 5 minutes, you know if they're actually able to demonstrate or live by them. So I was pretty strategic with not trying to change too much right away. More, I want to understand, I want to listen, I want to learn from you guys, I want to get a feel for where we are and where we've come from, and then establish where we're heading. But I want to build a team around one vision of trying to achieve something together. And the basic common theme for us was we want to be a role model of delivery. We want to be the gold standard in the country of what good coaching looks like. And that's going to take 3 to 5 years. And I hope a lot of you want to come along for the ride. But give me a few months here to work out where we need to go and how we're going to get there. And then we're going to circle back. So there was a lot of work to establish relationships. There's a point to my story here. The relationships and establishing trust where the key staff members who had been here a while, or, there's always 4 or 5 pros or staff members who they've been around the block a few times. They've taught a lot. They've worked at different facilities, and they're kind of our senior pros, those that I would confide in and ask questions of. I wanted to make sure I had them on board with where we were trying to take the team. How do you feel about this? There was a lot of questioning and understanding. And then trying to tie that in with, say, USTA coaching and the philosophy of player development and what USTA coaching encompasses. So putting that all together and then presenting a vision to the full team, I think the process of being able to say, all right, here's where we are, based on 3 months of conversations with you all, here's where we need to go, and here's how we're going to get there. What was critical after that was doing training sessions and meetings to establish how do we do it, our micro coaching practice on what does a good lesson look like, how do we have less feeding of tennis balls and more cooperative interaction on a court. How do we identify where we're short and then work on that so it fits in with the grand vision of what does the campus need to be? It's the national campus. It's the home of American tennis. It's the governing body's premier facility. What do we need to be? And kind of work backwards from there. It was quite daunting, but I think the 30 years of preparation of presenting that to smaller audiences and gradually building to bigger clubs helped with the process, versus if I'd come in and said, here's what we're going to be, here's the vision, and we start tomorrow, without having a good understanding of where we've come from, I think I would have failed. And the last thing I would add to that is the importance of, with the bigger the team, the more the delegating became important. I thought I was decent at it, but I really didn't understand how to delegate effectively until I'd been here a while and realized that at most businesses where it's all in front of you and you're in the mix all the time, you can influence people all day, every day. Once you get to a scale like this, or obviously bigger, you have to trust your team more, and you have to develop your team and rely on them to keep delivering the vision and the culture out on the court so the experience is consistent. I can't do it by myself. I needed help, and I needed to make sure my team were clear on where we were headed. So it was multifaceted.
It reminds me the story of, when the CEO of Starbucks came back into the organization. The first thing he did was go and visit every Starbucks around the country and find out what's happening on the ground. So great lessons there about people coming into new organizations, to never underestimate the value of the people who have been there for a long time and the furniture of the organization, and respect the years of experience that they have, and implement changes slowly to get everybody on board so that you can then live the vision, the mission, the values. So I just recapped because I loved what you said, and so important. I didn't want to gloss over it. And the art of delegation. You mentioned training and trust. All those things are great, but I get a lot of pushback on when I teach the concept of business coaching and asking questions and creating accountability and letting people choose how, in one-on-one meetings, they choose the agenda of the meeting. And sometimes I get a lot of pushback on that with the whole large and in charge philosophy, which of course has been has worked over the years, but it's not the way of the future. This is obviously my opinion. So I'm wanting your opinion on motivating this next generation of workforce, and what are some of the keys when we peel back the true meaning of delegation? What are your thoughts?
It's an interesting moment in time. It just means I'm getting older too, that you're talking about inspiring the next generation. I feel like it was just yesterday I was the next generation, but I look at our large team and we've got 5 different generations within our team. So that alone has been something I've invested time in, is understanding how to manage each of these generations. Now, I don't wake up and think about each generation, and when I have a conversation with each of them, the conversation's different. I think that happens naturally, but just awareness of my 65-year-old pro who's got 35 years director's experience versus my 22-year-old college graduate who has little experience but is just bouncing off the walls ready to go. How I manage them is very different, but I'm not conscious of how I start a conversation with them, if that makes sense. I just am aware of the differences, and I think I'm more accepting of where the conversation goes. So when the 22-year-old takes me down this path, I can run with it versus trying to redirect them in the direction that I want it to go. So I think one of the knocks on the current generation, or that younger generation, is they don't want to work as hard, they want everything, they want it now. And yeah, I do think they do want it now, and they're a lot more forward with their questions than we were. I think I grew up more mentality of I'll work hard and get recognized for my work and hope I get a promotion or get some more money next year. Whereas they are not afraid to say, I've been here 6 months. What's the plan for me next year? Where am I going? I would never ask that. I think it's just, there's a different level of curiosity about where I'm going. And if I don't see it, I will go and find it somewhere else. I don't think we grew up that way. It's not right or wrong, it's just different. But I don't think it's a fair knock to say that they don't work as hard. I think they just work differently. They require more guidance or direction to say, here's your guardrails. I need you to stay within the guardrails. If you want to go outside, and we need to have a conversation about that, but get the job done within the guardrails. And I'm okay with that, but I'm going to make you accountable for all the steps along the way. And to your point, we will have a meeting, and this is your meeting to tell me what's happening, and I'm going to ask you questions. So you come with the agenda versus I come with an agenda. My agenda is to see where you're at and hold you accountable and try and help you. And we're going to discover that together in a meeting. But you're coming with the updates, and because I think you're creating some independence and you're creating a sense of responsibility on their end, versus they just turn up and I have to do all the work to prepare for the meeting. So I like the idea of they drive the agenda, and I'm experienced enough to drive it back and move it around where we need to make sure we stay within those guardrails. But it's a fascinating process managing that many generations and saying, how do I manage this person, knowing what they're thinking? And it's very different than the way I think, but that's been good for me because it's keeping me. If everyone was my age that I was managing, I think that would be a bit easy.
Yeah.
There's some real challenges with the different generations, and I think understanding it. And I have a 25, 26-year-old daughter, so it's always fascinating to hear her view of the world and what bothers her and what's important. So that helps, but it's if you're not doing that, I think you're falling behind, and you're going to struggle as a leader.
Absolutely. And you can't do that without the art of asking great questions. I mean, I know that you and I both share that. We spoke about it many a times, the art of asking great open-ended questions, because at the end of the day, the latest stats from Gallup, 69% of the workforce is disengaged, and 18% of that are loudly disengaged. And thinking about managing tennis pros for a moment, the remote statistic was the highest portion that were engaged. So how do you attract and retain talent as it relates to being client facing? It's not an easy job. You and I have both been in the trenches ourselves. We have been on court for many hours upon too many hours sometimes. So what are your thoughts around that?
Look, to be honest, when I started at the campus, it was our biggest problem was not attracting, because if you have a profile like we did, the national campus, you attract people easily. There's curiosity and I want to work there. But our ability to retain wasn't great. And that hurt us because of the turnover, the quality of product is impacted, relationships are impacted. You know, we're in a, as you say, front-facing customer service, hospitality type industry. A familiar face and a familiar coach is something that it's like having your local bartender, and every time you go in, they know your name and they know what your first drink is and you know their name, and that relationship is critical for our business growth. So it's not just about retention, it's about growing our business, and the two go hand in hand. So we made substantial changes here from a compensation point of view in order to increase retention. And we've gone from having very, very quick turnover to, our full-time pros have been here on average 4 years now, and my leadership team has been here 6 to 7 years. So we've been able to improve that, which just gives you some stability, but it gives you breathing room to not be always hiring. I remember my first few years going to my manager and saying, I spent an entire month this year just hiring. That's all I did was hire. And that was just getting to a point where they walked in the door. That didn't include onboarding and so on. So I said, that's not the best use of my time. I'm not growing the business. I'm just refilling the leaky bucket of people. So that increased compensation and benefits and putting together a package that was attractive, that I felt could attract but also retain. But what was most important for us, Emma, which was interesting, was we started to establish a clear pathway for our employees, which was something in the tennis industry is not well presented. I think in other industries it's quite clear where you can go. So we work very hard on establishing more levels within our pathway to give coaches more opportunity to grow. And also with that, what the accompanying compensation looked like. So that if you started as an entry-level pro, you knew the next level was this. We called it a staff pro. After campus pro was intro, or starting pro, then a staff pro was next. And you knew roughly what the compensation adjustment would be. But more importantly, you knew what you had to do to get there. Versus it's a title, but you don't know what's required. So you don't want to get to the end of the year and say, yeah, you had a great year. You taught 2,000 hours for us. We're going to give you $2 an hour more. And I need you to go and do it again, but you're going to stay as a campus pro. They need to know how to get there. And especially when you go back to your point earlier about generational differences, the younger generation want to know how to get there and what do I have to do to be more successful. So we started to detail, all right, you're at this level. To go to the next level, you have to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and you have to be able to do it well as judged by your peers and your leadership team. And if all those things are checked off and the company's had a good year and you've got good performance reviews, then you're eligible for a promotion. And so we want to kind of develop them like you would a young athlete. And you say, here's your development plan, and these are the tournaments you have to play, and you have to do this much training. We wanted to have that open conversation. So I present that during the interview process, the concept of how we develop you. And I kind of live by the slogan, if you are not better after you've been with us, then we've failed you. So if you come in and we don't improve you, then we've failed you. And that's on me as the leader. I don't ultimately do all the training, but that's as a philosophy. If you are not better when you leave, then we have failed you. And we take that very seriously, but we present these concepts during an interview because I know that's an advantage over the facilities who just say, Emma, you're an amazing coach. Here's X dollars per hour, and we're going to give you 20 hours and you've got to build the rest of your clients. That's standard. How do we do something different? And it's starting to show in our retention, and we're starting to attract better pros who want to come and work here. So far, so good, but that was through a lot of listening and asking questions about why people leave, and there was consistency to it, and so things had to change.
What are the top 3 things you look for when you're hiring?
First and foremost, I hire for culture. Like, we're very much and it's a hot term these days, growth mindset. But for me, that means just an openness to learning, a curiosity to get better. And I think that has to be first and foremost. So we try and get to that in our interviews. I like to have conversations in our interviews versus your cookie cutter questions, and really get a feel for what their questions are. I love to hear what they're curious about. And if I start hearing how much do I get paid, what's a work week look like, what would my hours be, how many days off do I get, when am I eligible for paid time off, I start to look at those as little red flags versus how do you retain people? How do you develop your team? Do we have monthly training sessions? Do I have opportunities to meet with you one-on-one? What's your ongoing education philosophy? When I hear those sort of things, you're somebody who's going to fit in with our culture. The assumption is you're decent at what you do, whatever job you do. If you're a tennis coach and you're interviewing and you've got 10 years experience, the assumption is you're pretty good on the court. I'm going to test that during the interview process, but that's the assumption. What I want to see is, are you going to fit in with our team and add to our team and complement our culture? Because we know one rotten egg will kill the culture within months. So I can always help you get better as a coach, or my team will help you get better as a coach and build around our philosophy. But it's very hard to change somebody's character and what they stand for and have them fit into your culture. And so I always want to hire for that first.
And why do you think people play sport / obviously our chosen sport of tennis? I think this is a really, really important question. And literally, Simon, I couldn't help myself this morning. I was just walking around my local lake, and there were 2 teenage boys, and it's great that they're out there running summer camps for kids, right? The warm up, they're doing high knees. I mean, there's 5-year-old kids. There's like 20 of them. And then they're doing dynamic flex. Then they're doing suicides. That's the warm up. And then we go straight into a line on both courts. And I went over there and I said, I love your voice projection. I love your energy. And here's my card. Here's my, back in the day, I used to know a little about tennis. And please just respect that I'm on a global mission, #no more lines for the rest of my life. If I see a line of kids, there is way too much free content out there. Any of Judy Murray stuff. And again, if either of these 2 boys this morning were listening, I was super nice and polite about it, but I could not help myself. I was like a magnet to walking on that court and just handing over my card. And, I wonder if they'll actually do anything about it. I'm not sure, which, returning back to my original question, I know you think deeply about this question, and I'd love for you to comment on #no more lines.
Sometimes I think it's a default for, if they're a young coach, no one's shown them any different, but it's the
Correct.
default. I'm
Correct.
going to help one at a time, and that's all I can do.
Yeah, so I'm not having a go at them at all. So please don't get that. It was more about, you don't know what you don't know until you're shown a better, another way, a better way.
One of the things I did when I first started here was look at the number of touches somebody had during a lesson experience. So
just for business listeners, that means just contact the number of hits.
Correct. So our product being an on-court tennis lesson, group session, how many times in an hour were the players actually engaged in hitting the ball? And in an hour, it was less than 35, 40 minutes where they were actually playing tennis. Call it 50% of the time. And so we came up with a very simple philosophy. And you would think USTA, it's an advanced scientific, like fancy philosophy. So part of the philosophy was less talking, more touches. How do we talk less as a coach and let them touch the ball more often in these tennis experiences? They're spending a lot of money to come for a lesson experience. Do you think standing around listening to you talk or picking up the balls for 30 minutes is a great experience? I don't think it is. And I challenged the pros, and we went through a series of trainings to be able to talk less. So it was kind of 10 words or less. Can you get your next instruction across in 10 words or less, which is almost impossible, but it was just a way to get them thinking about the next instruction. And how do we remove the security blanket, which is the teaching cart full of balls next to their hip, where they had to feel like they were feeding all the time? So we did a lot of practice without teaching carts and said, here's 20 tennis balls, keep them engaged. And there was a lot of pros who were lost. So it was a real education on how do you manage a group of people without having to be in control all the time. Kind of like running a meeting and needing to be in control all the time. How do you allow the participants to actually, and empower them to actually be successful? And every time they do something that's a little off, you don't have to correct them. Let them learn through some mistakes, give them a little turbo tip, we would call it, and then let them go again and let them fail forward or fall forward, so to speak, right? So that was a big change for our coaches who had come from a variety of backgrounds. And that was a large change to implement. But the bottom line was that you're not doing it for me. It will help you as a coach, but we're doing this for the customer experience. The reason they are here is to play a sport, get a sweat, hit a lot of balls, meet new people, and connect with the facility and the pro to a point where they want to keep coming back. That's the measure of success, is that they're still playing with us 5 to 10 years from now, not at the end of one session, they're ready to leave because this was not what I thought tennis. I thought tennis was when the ball went back and forth, not when a coach yelled at me and told me what I was doing wrong. And then I went to the end of the line and dreaded the next time I came to the front of the line. So that was a big culture change. Some were good at it, some struggled, and there were some who just didn't like it and they don't work here anymore. But that was our philosophy and that was where we were going. But your original question was why people come. They're the reasons. They come for a lot of reasons beyond getting better at playing the sport. They're escaping their world for an hour or two to have a unique experience that takes them away mentally from work and kids and everything else going on in their life. And they've all got stories. And you don't know what their stories, you don't know what type of day they've had when they walk on your court. And your job's to engage to a level where they just get taken away and have such a good time that they have to come back next time.
Yep. And
it's simple, really. But,
yeah, it is.
But it's no different to if I owned a restaurant
Correct.
or a bar, or it's the same experience when someone leaves, you want them to come back. And what does that look like for our industry? That was really what we were trying to present as a philosophy.
Yeah. Even with, I can't help myself, I'm still on court maybe 4 hours a month these days, but in one of the groups that I take, we always have a life lesson. And just last week, it was literally working on lobbying, and it was all about how can you create more time and space in your day? How can you carve out more time? How do you, which I'll go there next with you, like with a program like that. I mean, squeezing in this podcast interview, how do you manage your time?
Funny you ask that, because I just went on vacation, which is something that, I really value. But I was talking with my wife about, I used to own a tennis facility before I came to the campus. I was a managing partner. So I wore way too many hats. And it was really hard to disconnect because there were so many people who needed me. Not because I was so good at anything. It was more we were very short-handed and had a lack of resources. So I had to do a lot more than your traditional maybe managing partner would do. And so when I'd go on vacation, I never switched off. I could for moments, but it was very hard to disconnect. And so when I went on this last vacation, I actually sent a message to my key leaders and said, you've got until the end of today to catch me, but I'm turning my phone off. But you can reach me on my personal phone if you need to get me. And that was fairly unique to do that in the role I have. But it was incredibly relaxing because we've all got phone addiction issues. And if my phone is on the counter and I'm on vacation, I'm going to walk past it and grab it and look and see just constantly. So the fact it was off, it wasn't there as a distraction. And I relaxed more. It was just a better vacation as a result. But there's vacation and then there's normal work week, and how do I make that work? And I think balancing, I'm still not great at switching off. It takes me a while to disconnect when I come home. And quite often my wife will be waving her hands in front of my face saying, Simon, you're not here, you're thinking about something. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Whereas I used to say, no, I'm not, but I was lying because I really was still thinking about something at work. But it's part of what, I consider myself a high achiever. Like I think about work and how I can get better and how do we make the campus better all the time. That's part of what makes me successful, but it's also something that I have to work on, is to be able to not think about work all the time. I inherited that from my father. It's kind of a generational thing, I think, but I like that about me as well. I'm motivated. So I've worked very hard over the years to become more connected with family and away time and do things for myself. Even something as simple as getting up and going for a walk around the place I live in and working out. Like I would maybe used to wake up and I would shower and go to work. So really just giving myself time for myself. As I've gotten older, it's like I've got to make myself a priority more than the job. That's a work in progress.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us have that perfected.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge and something I keep working on.
Yeah. And I think also just a quick tip, anytime you can treat it like an athlete, your downtime is your downtime. That helps you recover. There's no doubt about that. In 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what do you think makes a great coach?
In my space particularly, but I think coaching in general, it's fairly consistent. We use the word adapt a lot. I think you must be able to adapt. Whether you're coaching on a court and you have a plan for 6 people and it's 1 hour, and then 4 people turn up and then 1 hurts their ankle in the first 15 minutes and then 1 has to leave early. Your best laid plans always get messed up and you have to adapt. I don't think that's any different in the leadership space either. I think where things are cruising along, stability within my team, and then my director says, I'm moving to Hong Kong, taking a new role. All right, so I had to adapt on the fly, and now I'm trying to find a new director and doing 2 jobs at once in the interim. That wasn't the plan for this year. So constantly adapting. I think energy and enthusiasm, I'm going to make that a combination. I can't stand people who go through the motions where it looks like it's a paycheck. I think if you work I don't think any job that's acceptable, but I think if you work behind a computer and you can just do your job and you can get away with that to an extent. But we're on show every time we go on the court, or if you're in any business that's hospitality related, you are on show 24/7. The minute you walk in the place, you are on, and you're engaged, and you're enthusiastic. And I don't know the number, but I think probably 75 to 85% of the reason people do come to us on court, or to anybody who's a coach, is because of the coach, not their knowledge. It's because they want to be around a person who's engaging and helps them get better at their skills, or better at what they're doing, or creates a great experience. But they feed off their energy. How do you not? So I think that's critical. And then I like the word purposeful. I like the idea that if you are coaching, you have a plan. There's a purpose to every exercise you do. One of the questions we ask a lot of our team is, what's the purpose of that exercise? Where are you going with that? How does that fit in with the plan for this player, or this, and that's playing coaching, no different to my leadership team who have off-court responsibilities. Where does that fit in with where we're headed and how we're going to get there? What's the purpose of your point there? Where are you going with that? If there's no purpose to it, you're going through the motions to an extent. And I hate seeing a coach who's kind of making up things as they go along. There's some creativity to that. If you're a really advanced coach, you can kind of wing it and still be purposeful. But the thing I hate is when I see a coach who does, say, an exercise, and then they do a new exercise, and then another new exercise, and they're not building on each other, and there's no purpose behind it. They're just good drills that have no connection. What's the purpose of where that's headed? So they would be my 3 words.
Yeah, I love it. Adapt, energy, purposeful. I'll even give you the hyphenated enthusiasm, because you are an enthusiastic human, and I know you do so much speaking around the world and back home in Australia as well. You also are the co-host of the Racquet Fuel Podcast. So I was on your show as well. So a nice podcast swap here where you provide insights into leadership development within the racket sports industry. I appreciate everything you do. And I guess I'd love for you to land this episode on, I did a talk recently on what I know to be true about tennis. So I'm wondering, kind of like, well, after all these years, what do you know to be true about life, about tennis, about leadership? Take that anywhere you want, but what do you know to be true?
That's a good question. I've never been asked that question. You put me on the spot, but it's a good question to think about. What I know is true that is that change is constant. Right? I'm not making that up. That's a line that we all hear often, but it is true. And you have to be prepared for that. Kind of goes with that adaptability comment earlier, but change is constant, and you're always preparing for what's next versus getting too comfortable with where you are. I think as a leader, that's just something that's ingrained, is change is constant and be ready for it. And what's next? It's part of my disconnect issue probably too, is I'm always looking at what's next and not resting on what we are. Like, how do we get better? How do we improve that little bit more every year? What are we doing that's different versus the status quo and just resting on our laurels, so to speak? So that all kind of figures into that change is constant. But I also think the one thing that's true, leadership, coaching, tennis especially, is just the importance of relationships. I think that's constant through any industry, any walk of life, but the importance of your relationships and the quality of relationships, and can you be true to who you are and just let people enjoy the relationship with you because you're an honest, vulnerable person who is genuine around people? Because if you're not, I think that people see through that pretty quickly. And whatever industry you're in, there's always that saying, it's a small industry. Someone knows someone who knows you. So your relationships are critical. So there's relationships with your customers, relationships with your co-workers, and relationships with your industry peers. And I think all of those need to be healthy depending on which aspect of the industry you're in. but I really value those relationships and make a real effort to cultivate them and keep them going. And there's people who, I have former owners who I would consider now one of my really good friends, and that's 25-year relationship. It's the sort of person who I just pick up the phone now and say, what do you think about this? How are your kids doing? So it was a professional relationship, but it went beyond that after I left that place, because I respected the relationship we had professionally and the type of person he was. That's been something that I've wanted to keep in my life. And it's amazing how often that helps me, whether it's a safe space for me to go to, and I can ask a question like a mentor, but it's also someone who adds value to my life because I value them as a person and how they treat their kids and his wife and his family. And so you just don't know where those relationships are going to go and how they're going to help you, versus I've got what I need from this person and then move on. That connection just never seems to stop. It always circles back at some point. So there are a couple of things I think that are constant and true within the tennis industry, but probably just life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, people may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So you really are a legacy coach, mate. You really do impact so many people around the world. It's been a pleasure talking less, increase your touches on the ball more, so that, and if you're not getting better, then we've failed you. Make sure you're growing at every establishment. Change is constant. Ask yourself what's next, but remember to slow down and sometimes even turn off your phone. It's okay. Everything will be okay. Adapt with energy and enthusiasm and always be on purpose. Thank you so much, Simon Gale, for being on the Coaching Podcast.
Emma, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. And thanks, everyone, for listening.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and US college sporting scholarship placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fit while maximizing sports performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating review on your podcast listening device. And don't forget to tell a fellow coach about the show. The ball is in your court to take action and enjoy your coaching.